turn your back on a buffalo is generally when they're going to be behind you.
Yeah.
Now, we can watch them, but I always sort of keep that peripheral vision.
Yes.
I'm watching it. These fellas are pretty good, but if you're working these fellas out here, mate, they'll be quick, real quick.
And the characteristics that are different, do you find, like from buffalo to, say, cattle, like, you know, your general run-of-the-mill, what would you say is like the real big difference you find with them?
Cattle will sort of send you a few text messages saying we're going to snot you if they're going to.
Yes, give you a bit of...
Buffalo will line you up and go, we're full serious.
Yeah.
Sometimes them old cows will bluff you, but sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And when they hit hard.
Yeah.
One thing with buffalo is they're extremely accurate with their horns. But once you've even tipped them, 2 days later, they know where that tip is.
Yeah.
They tend to hit harder, but that's generally, to put an animal in that situation, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10 is a man-made problem.
Yes, yeah. And even us here now, like, so we're sort of at the, what you'd call the, you know, the front of your mob, but we're really influencing those fellas at the back there. And you've got to be careful of that, don't you? Really be watching that.
Yeah.
You're influencing everything.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people don't work buffalo on foot. We work most of ours, all of ours nearly on foot. Sometimes we have to bring in a push-up vehicle for a big, you know, big clean-skin bulls. But, you know, what's low stress sometimes is getting the required amount of pressure to get the job quickly to get it away from it.
And you're doing that probably from a safety point of view for your side and for the buffalo, because you don't want to get them hurt either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Try that. Yeah, I don't often need a mic, but I'll take one today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We put that up on the screen just to prove to you that Adrian Phillips has 2 shirts with sleeves on them. That was one shirt, and this is the second one. And I was pleased to give him a third one today, which you might get to see later on. But we were delighted to include just a little snapshot of what these fellas were talking about at the Annabrew Yards as part of the film package, the training package that LiveCorp and AgriFutures invested in earlier this year. And we just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of a chat. We couldn't whip you out quite in a, we couldn't fit you all in the chopper this afternoon to get you out to Annabrew, so we thought we'd give you a quick glimpse there. But thank you for the introduction, Don. I won't labour the point other than to say that to be on this stage after that sort of address from David Connolly is a privilege. And we're honoured to have someone, a leader like him, stand up and give those home truths in the way that he has done. And it was great to have a chat with David just before we got up on stage and talk about the shared interests that we have. So thank you, David. I'll introduce our special guests, because it's a great opportunity to wrap up the day after a bit of firebrand speeching. If anyone's got any carpentry skills and knows how to fix that that pulpit that Connolly's just destroyed, we'll have a chat overnight, I think, but he's done a good job there. Let's have a good chat to wrap up the day. Don's just given a bit of a background about the 2 fellas here with me. They're old mates that have known each other for a few months. They get on like a house on fire, and we thought it would be a great thing to bring a born and bred Territory fella up on stage with a bloke from a sort of cow puncher from the wet Western Victoria, because when we bring people together like we're doing in this room and we talk about what we've got in common, we're connected no matter what the geography or the species or any other issues. So first of all, a bit of a time and a place for, I guess, for Adrian. Give us a quick snapshot, Adrian, about how you've come to be. You're not what we would typically define as an agri-politician, but you're the president of a peak industry council in the Northern Territory, an important one. What's your experience across your decades, because we're up here today to talk about the evolution of the buffalo industry. And for a young fella, you've seen a fair bit in your years. So give us a bit of your background and how you've got to be where you are today in terms of what you're doing with your animals and with us at an industry level.
Right, the first reason why I'm here is passion for livestock, buffalo, on both cattle and buffalo. I'm born and bred in Katherine, third, fourth generation, I couldn't even remember. I grew up in Katherine on a Brahman stud. I did an apprenticeship in Katherine. I'm a butcher by trade. I've lived in Katherine majority of my life, based there. I obtained a helicopter licence, and I did that off the back of a buffalo because nothing else was going to make enough money for it. Mustering all over the Northern Territory, catching free-range cattle and buffalo for over 20 years. Had a bit of a break after the live export ban because that rattled us all real hard, but the buffalo keeps bringing me back. I keep coming back to the buffalo because that's how I make some money. And yeah, I come up and I'm up on the Mary River floodplains nowadays, running both cattle and buffalo, and yeah, I've broken down a little bit now and want to put something back because buffalo, it's made two ex-wives rich. You know, I've got to put something back. So yeah, I just love buffalo, and all my children and my stepchildren are all in the industry, and it's my way of putting something back, you know.
That's excellent. We'll delve a bit more into that. But Byron, I've known you for a few years with your live export involvement, which is pretty extensive. And earlier this year, I guess with the course that we conducted up here, it was a great way to bring Adrian's part of this northern supply chain and his experience to connect it with what you've done, which is often everything after what Adrian's done. So he's been a lot in that, looking around the wilds of Northern Australia with cattle and buffalo. You've been in some wild and woolly places overseas, in live export scenarios and animal handling scenarios. This bloke's also, if you Google him, you might still see photos of him as a rodeo clown or on top of a bull himself too. So he knows wild and woolly. But I think you can ask him about his belt buckle later on. But you were up here to continue the role that you've got that you've had for many years in the shipboard stockman's course in animal handling and equipping new people to go on board vessels and to be in yards and know how to handle animals. Give us a bit about your experience, how long you've been doing that sort of role, and how you enjoy working with animals at home on the farm in Victoria and professionally beyond that.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks everyone for coming today. Yeah, so basically I grew up in Victoria and did schooling down in Victoria, and then finished school, jumped in my motor car at the time and drove up here. I think at the time, I wrote an email to CPC. I think they had some, back then it was just all email, so I emailed and I got a job with CPC, so I took that up. And I went sort of just, as everyone does, it went ringing for a little bit and sort of cut my teeth there, and then got a taste of live export because I was working at Argyle Downs at the time, which was a bullock depot, as you guys all probably know at the time. So yeah, sort of did a lot of sort of getting bullocks ready for export, and then so after, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I went back to study. So I studied in Victoria, and then 2011 hit, and I had the opportunity to go over to Indo, right when I guess everything was quite hairy, and so from there I was basically on the ground in abattoirs and sort of trying to oversee the welfare of the cattle at the time. And working with importers, trying to work out, how can we go forward? How can we implement these new systems? So I think Greg mentioned it earlier. There's some difficult times. If you want to I guess feel uncomfortable, that was probably the most uncomfortable I've ever been. Going into these abattoirs in the evening, you haven't slept a lot. And knowing that you mightn't be very well received, that was pretty difficult to do. But on the flip side of that, you know, I built great relationships with people. You know, we were able to have, you know, smoker, you know, the amount of tea you'd drink with sugar and Coke, you'd have at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then go back to the hotel, you couldn't sleep because your eyes were wide, you know, with your sugar wired. But, you know, I was able to build some really good relationships there, and I just really liked, you know, to be honest, hanging out with people that had the same sort of passion with stock. You know, that people, I could see that they loved their cattle, that you know, and I could see that it was their livelihood, and I wanted to sort of improve that. Or help improve, just share knowledge really, because I learned as much from them as they did from me. And then, and then I've been involved with the Live Corp stockmanship training program there for a few years. And then when we had it up here at Darwin, I went out, and I was pretty nervous actually when I went out to meet Adrian. I thought, here's this bloke from Catherine, and he's going to give me a bit of a hard time. But to be honest, we got out there and we just sort of, a bit like we are now, we were sort of winging it. We didn't really know how we're going to make the day work, and we just threw a few jokes in. You know, we got to know each other. Adrian mentioned about a text message with the buffalo or with the cattle. I don't get service down in Victoria at my spot, so it's no good to me getting a text message. But you know, we just kicked it off, and same thing. It didn't matter where I was in Indo or with Middle East, like just that connection between a real love of our livestock, and that's what just keeps me turning up. You know, I'm sure the people that do know me in the room know that I'm not super, you know, comfortable sort of in this environment. I much prefer to be out in the cattle yards. That's my home. You know, I love the cattle yards or sheep yards. It doesn't really matter. You're the same thing. So it's yeah, that's why I'm here, just same as Adrian, just loving the livestock.
We recognised Byron. I think I'll make him embarrassed here, but in 2016, I think Byron was our industry's young achiever of. He's not going to run off stage. Yeah, when we had our conference in Canberra, and that was due recognition for a quiet achiever who'd been scoring some significant goals, and you know, there's some very notable names on that list. Byron's place is well earned there. These two gents don't like being up on stage, and don't find themselves inclined to grab a microphone. So we are indeed very, very privileged. But like we see anywhere, whether it's in your travels, we were talking yesterday about your time in Russia. Adrian's seen every corner of the territory and in the depths of into Arnhem Land and elsewhere. If we start conversations about understanding our animals, the desire we've got to uphold their well-being and to streamline our interaction with them, we've got a conversation anywhere in the world, don't we? That's a global chat. Adrian, tell me about how that's been a language that you've worked with from your years catching, working through to the, you know, even in the butcher, getting animals prepared for slaughter, but working with teams that you've managed, Indigenous people who might not otherwise have too many other employment options, but that language of passion working for animals is one that carries us anywhere in the territory and anywhere around the world.
Yeah, livestock handling is absolutely everything, whether it, you know, buffalo or cattle, whatever, all the way from preparing it right the way through. And working with Indigenous and that, one thing I've found is I've worked with them all my life. I can get a connection and work and explain, and I can even speak their pidgin half the time, you know, and understand what we're doing. All the welfare side of things and handling is absolute paramount, you know. You hear everyone go on about buffalo, they're a mad, dangerous thing. Well, you know what? No, they're not. 9 times out of 10, it's a human doesn't know how to handle animals. My kids handle buffalo on foot. They're in it all the time. Buffalo generally are made mad by human error. It really is, and welfare right the way through, even on the export ships. If the handler's not done right at the start, it's a flow-on effect, and well, we pay for it on the boats, you know. As you know, I'm proper freaking here.
No, but you've seen people you've worked with, the teams you've managed and the teams you're still managing. We've seen that in the last couple of weeks, Byron and I. that when you lead a good unit, there's something extremely rewarding about working together professionally, ensuring that the way we handle our animals from start to finish is done the right way, because that animal will carry with it that experience from wherever you are, to, down on the banks of the Mary River, or through to the feedlot in Indonesia beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Your first imprint in my world, we'll go to buffalo, is paramount. Like if they're not treated right and they're pushed too hard, even with a helicopter from the start, that could be the problem, and it'll compound all the way through. And I see it where they've been tortured animals I've bought. I won't say tortured, but mishandled, and they never really get over it, and that creates a problem. I've gone into export yards and loaded a lot of buffalo, and I've walked in and gone, whoa, let's just change a few things where people are. Maybe if less is best with people with buffalo, and work on that, how to handle them better, and it all flows right through. And those animals, well, I've got a heap of bulls sitting in the yard at home now. We caught a week ago. They were eating and drinking within 2 days. They're calm, settled all the way through. So livestock handling all the way through.
We don't like talking about infectious diseases at the moment. We're very careful when we do it, but good handling and the results of good handling is a bit of an infectious disease, isn't it? Because when you catch it, it's hard to let it go. What have you seen, Byron, in recent weeks when we got you away from the confines of a yard and put you in some vehicles in some rough terrain out there around the Mary River? You were able to spend some time with Adrian and some of his guys and see that catching end of it. What are those principles about good handling? I sort of had written down here, they're tough animals, so you handle with care in every respect. And you would have seen that where you went with Adrian?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think what I've noticed throughout today, everyone's kept things pretty simple, and I keep it very simple too with livestock handling. Like, it doesn't matter whether we're in that catcher there, the chopper there, or on foot, or using dogs, or on a horse. The principles are exactly the same. Like, it's so basic that's why it's difficult to get right, because it's when things are basic, that's when it's difficult to get right. You've got to just go back to the basics, and I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is that a discharge overseas, which a lot of people here know what a discharge is like. There's lots of energy, there's lots of people. You've got government, you've got importers, you've got stockies, you've got all these people. Half the time, go and get a box of Coke, go and sit over there. You lot go and have a cup of tea, go and have a smoke, and then we'll start the discharge. Get rid of all the distractions, get rid of everything, pair it right back, and then start. Same with buffalo. Straight away, I clicked with Adrian because I could see how he worked his cattle through his yards, or livestock through his yards, because I could see a bare patch of. I could see like the yards were basically dirt, and then there's this beautiful patch of grass right around the gate, leading into your lead-up yard there. Like you could tell his pressure was perfect. He wasn't sort of smashing him up on rails and things like that, because he just basic stuff, letting him think about it. And it does, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're in the chopper or a catcher or a horse. Or actually, speaking of the catcher, I think I broke down on the second day, didn't I, in the hazer, so I didn't get to do too much of it. No, it was good. Like, it's the same thing. It's just very basic. But yeah, less is best. And yeah, it's just remembering why you're there. You're not really there, to move the livestock, so to speak. You've got to be thinking, okay, we're going to, they're going from this truck to this truck, they're going up this ramp, but where are they actually going to end up really? So if we can make that process, simple and calm, and like Adrian said, that first imprint, if it can be a positive one, well, that's going to stick with them. Yeah, you definitely. If they don't want to go, nothing you can do to make them go. Like, yeah. So.
They're sensitive animals. They're smart animals. Adrian always tells me they're the second smartest behind saltwater crocodile. But they are animals that they're with a swamp buffalo in particular. Bad handling, nowhere to hide. Temper, nowhere to hide. Like, you cannot leave an animal after you've done the wrong thing by it and get away with that, because it will carry that imprint for a lot longer than some other species that I've come across. And that's a challenge, but isn't that a wonderful reason to do the right thing? Because from what I've seen with the way both of you work, what's good for buffalo creates really good handling and systems for other animals as well. And that's why it's an important part of live export in the north.
It's good for the people too. Like, it's good for, like, you know, as soon as you get wound up, you know, you're better off, you know, it's hard for us to do because we're all action people, but as soon as you get wound up, you're better off going and having, like, you know, I don't smoke, but, you know, you're better off going and have a smoke, you know, going sitting down and forgetting about it for 10 minutes. Like, you know, Adrian, one of the key things, you know, when we were unloading some of those clean skin bulls, I open the truck, go and get a drink of water, come back in 15 minutes, they'll probably poke off themselves. Like, you know, and sure as buggery, that's what happens.
It's an important part of what my main job is, which is live exports, and it's an important part of our supply chain. I mean, we've seen buffalo numbers now very strong for a few years, and that's helping keep our supply chains operating, because our yards, our trucks, the chopper pilots, etc., you know, that lacking throughput hurts. And so to bring those buffalo in, and we are seeing really modern buffalo come through our facilities and head off increasingly as feeder animals to that market in Indonesia, which is increasingly strong. So we're excited about the opportunity to bring that new dimension to live export that Byron's been a part of for a fair while. What do you see as the opportunity, Adrian, when you're talking to yard operators and others, especially in this last sort of 12 months, and the abattoir at Bachelor? There's huge opportunities there to share some wisdom, and it pays huge dividends, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, there's massive opportunities there for buffalo out in Arnhem Land, all over the top end. I split it up in a few different categories. You know, we've got the free-range harvesting, your heavier animals for the live export, the slaughter animals and the abattoir. And then the domestication, you know, to start getting a few buffalo behind wire. I work on some harder country, and, you know, buffalo thrive where cattle are flat out to survive. They handle a lot of things a lot different. Yes, we get less money per kilo than cattle do, but my money going back in to get that is a lot different. My mortalities are way down. The biggest thing is the handling of them. You've got to have tight wires. If they learn a habit one time, they'll always do it, you know. So I don't have a single electric fence on Annabrew, mate, and I've got 800-900 buffalo behind wire. As far as like with the concerns of LSD and FMD, buffalo right now, our members in the Buffalo Industry Council are scattered all over Arnhem Land, catching hundreds and hundreds of buffalo every week, going in front of a vet with a live export and also the abattoir. I see that as really, really important, because we're monitoring right now, as well as creating real jobs out in Arnhem Land, which, you know, a lot of, you know, the Indigenous people in the communities, they're really keen to work in the livestock industry. I won't just say buffalo there, because some of the best workers I've ever employed are from all over Arnhem Land, I just see there's great opportunities there. I also have the riverine buffalo, ex-Beatrice Hill. I'm not into the dairy side, being a butcher, but yeah, you know, it's exciting times ahead with us there. Going forward. So I break it into those three different categories, but the one thing that comes back with, I'm going to say livestock again, not just buffalo here, handling. We've got to really lift our game there. A lot of the old style handling and understanding of livestock, that's where a lot of the welfare issues are.
It's learning, it's education. What are we passionate about? What have you seen at that course you're participating with, Adrian? You've done some courses as well, and what do you see the opportunities based on what the runs you've got on the board, you know, for the next year, 2, 5 years, especially as we're trying to develop people's capacity to handle animals, to monitor animals, as you say, to bring animals into the supply chain? That is a huge part of our monitoring system for animal disease across northern Australia, whether they're scrub animals, cattle or buffalo. If they're not being caught, they're not being monitored. So as we're trying to increase that capacity across northern Australia, what are the opportunities you see there? Not just with Indigenous communities and rangers, those who want to participate there, but in giving people skills to read animals, to handle animals. There's a number of dividends there that I know excite you both.
Yeah, I think with livestock handling, it can be a real confidence booster for people. Like I'll draw back on Indonesia, like back in those days. Like we worked with people that were basically down their supply chain. Like they were pretty low in terms of to how they were thought of, I guess, in the whole supply chain. They were sort of backyard workers, and it wasn't, back then it wasn't looked upon, really like as a skilled job. And then during this whole SCAS implementation and things like that, we were able, and through a little bit of knowledge sharing, we were able to bring these guys from basically no say in the system to basically controlling the system through, if they saw a welfare issue, they could pull up on it, etc., etc. And it's similar with this buffalo. Well, what excites me about buffalo is I see a similar opportunity up here, where it could go one or two ways. It could be just let's forget about them. That they're a real sort of pain in the industry. Let's sort of try and reduce them, or let's use it as an opportunity, and let's train up some people how to use them. Understand that to work them outside the yards, for example, if they're the wrong type of animal, if they're not quite educated. I think David touched on putting the right spec in, making sure that you're sending the right animals to the right to the right areas. That's just key, and then you can handle them appropriately. It excites me. I think like the opportunity here is amazing to really produce some good careers for Indigenous communities, and I think that's exciting personally.
We've been flashing up and hinting at a photo I took, I don't know, a few weeks ago of you fellas at Annabrew, when we happened to snag one with some good antlers on it. Adrian, you hadn't seen one like that at Annabrew for a fair while, you'd said. But just mindful of the time, but it's important, I guess, that between the two of you, we say, how do we get to a spot like that where we've caught, what's the planning that goes into that with a machine like that and a helicopter? And I guess the most impressive thing that we see doing it is the most successful is the quickest, isn't it? It's clean, it's well coordinated, and it gets the animal restrained with, like we do wherever we are, with the least amount of pushback.
Tom, with that, I'm going to say quick, but I'm also going to say there's a lot of bloody cowboys out there and bull catchers that I wish they weren't in them, because it's not chasing. It's about working the animal, right? So I just got to get that one straight, because...
Not rushed.
Yeah, it's not rushed as in chasing an animal. Bull catching or buffalo catching, that's just what I use to muster the animal and grab it quickly. It's quite often you see I go out with the WRSC boys. The other week we had 47 bulls tied up in 2 hours, but in the trucks, yep. Like right there at a point, not chased all over the country, not overheated, not cooked.
And you don't want to be chasing an animal in that sort of vehicle for any more than a few seconds, really, do you?
Yeah, that's right. And people say, geez, you got an eye and a catcher. Well, I put that down to when I was a kid. I used to track wallabies on a bloody horse chasing them. So I learnt to read a wallaby, and then I learnt to read a cow, and now it's the same with a buffalo and a catcher. It's also the same in a helicopter.
And so from there, this is an animal that we wouldn't select for live export. A fair bit of age on it, and getting the horns to a shippable length wouldn't be worth doing for the animal. But it's important to keep not rushing, but to keep working quickly. So we've got to get make sure that he's on a truck and got some water.
Yeah, Tom. Well, like even our pickup trucks have got all reticulation in them. It's a very quick show. It depends on the helicopter. You know, heli muster $6 a minute for that helicopter, so we've got to get him on the ground quick. So sometimes we will just head tie, and then the kids will water the buffalo. It's a quick operation, but it's not quick as in rushing. It's all about the welfare of the livestock, you know. And I pride myself on how quick they go back onto feed in the yards. So it's no different to being on a horse. You're working the animal with a bull catcher. People think it's speed, speed, speed. No. Then, you know, with the welfare of the animal all the way through, like you said, that bull there, he run jungle job. He wasn't an export animal because they're the fellas that cause all the grief on the boats. You know, they're pretty wooden-headed at that age.
And I think there's another shot that's been rotating that's got what's a more typical Indonesian type animal that we're sending increasingly, and that's a sort of the modern face of the animals, isn't it, to a large extent?
Yeah, well, what we're looking there, little feeder buffaloes, yeah, and that's what should be behind wire to have consistency with the supply through the wet season. And yeah, so you got your feeder buffalo there, and then your Mickeys for the boat. You know, I'm not going to say a weight because your floodplain bulls are big and heavy, or Mickeys, but they're young in age. You know.
Yep. Byron, just what you've seen in for people that haven't seen buffalo, mindful that we're getting close to wrap up time, but how comparable are those principles from a cattleman's perspective, where you've come up and you've looked, especially at some of these animals for shipping, that we often say they're almost like cattle. These animals are probably animals that change people's perception of what a top-end swamp buffalo is.
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's I think it's important to note. Yeah, they are. You know, they're really cool. I found them so enjoyable to work with. You know, they were really cool to work with. It's like it's the same principle. Okay, what we need to do though is we need to go back to what we are. Like, we're all stockmen. Like, we've got to put a bit of stockmanship in everything, and going back to using words like feel and like, you know, when I'd never worked buffalo, and I went like in Adrian's yards there, and it took me a while to get the feel of them. Like I had to get the feel of them. Like, you just can't you can't teach it. But you got to have the experience. So I had to go and get the feel of them. How they were working, and then you can then you can work with them, and it just comes back to stockmanship. You know, like I said, it's so basic. That's why it's difficult to get right. But yeah, I think just you know, they're the types that we need to focus on, and they're so enjoyable to work with. And yeah,
it's been a really it's a great privilege to see you guys become friends and work so well together. And I expect that we've got a fair bit of time ahead to do more work. We don't have much time ahead now, given the time of day. We were keen to invite questions, but I'll probably be given the wrap-up if I do that. Both Adrian and Byron are going to be around. They will then disappear back into the wilderness like they tend to do, but they'll be around later today and tomorrow. So please make sure you have a chat. And for two fellas that won't be back up on stage holding microphones anytime soon and have helped finish up our day very nicely, I'd really like you to show your appreciation. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been great.
thank you.